The notification ping from my banking app cut through the laughter and chatter of our annual family reunion like a blade through silk. I glanced at my phone, expecting to see a routine transaction alert, and felt the blood drain from my face as I read the screen. Account balance, $0. Last transaction, wire transfer, $47,850, authorized. I stood frozen beside the dessert table, watching my extended family mill around the backyard of my sister Amanda's house, completely unaware that my entire life savings had just vanished into thin air. The smell of barbecue smoke and the sound of children's laughter felt surreal, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. "Everything okay, Vicky?" My brother-in-law Michael appeared at my elbow, his voice carrying that practiced concern he used when he wanted something. His smile didn't reach his eyes as he glanced at my phone screen. "My bank account," I said quietly, still staring at the impossible number. "It's empty." "Oh, that." Michael's tone shifted to casual dismissal, as if we were discussing the weather. "Yeah, Amanda and I had to make an emergency transfer. Don't worry about it." The words hit me like a physical blow, but years of dealing with family dynamics had taught me to control my reactions. I looked up at him slowly, keeping my expression neutral despite the fire building in my chest. "You transferred my money without permission. We needed it more," he said with a shrug, loud enough that several relatives turned to look at us. "Amanda's been stressed about the house payments, and you know how hard things have been since I lost my job. Family helps family, right?" Aunt Patricia, who had been reaching for a cookie, paused mid-motion. Cousin James stopped his conversation with Uncle Paul. The dessert table had become the center of an audience I hadn't asked for, watching what they assumed was a minor family disagreement. "Michael," I said carefully, my voice steady as glass, "that was $47,850, my entire savings account. And now it's helping family instead of just sitting there earning pennies in interest." He had the audacity to look pleased with himself. "Besides, it's not like you have kids or a mortgage to worry about. We have real responsibilities." The casual cruelty of his words, delivered in front of my relatives, like he was explaining a reasonable business decision, should have shattered me. 6 months ago, it would have. 6 months ago, I would have sputtered and cried and begged him to explain how this could have happened. But I wasn't the same person I'd been 6 months ago. Instead, I smiled. Not a happy smile, not a sad smile, but the kind of smile that made Michael's confident expression falter slightly. "You're absolutely right," I said, sliding my phone back into my purse. "Family should help family. See? I knew you'd understand once. Which is why I'm sure you'll understand when the consequences begin tomorrow morning." The certainty in my voice made him take a step back. Around us, the casual eavesdropping had turned into focused attention. Conversations had stopped. Even the children seemed quieter. "What consequences?" Michael asked, but his voice had lost its smug confidence. I reached for a chocolate chip cookie from the dessert table, taking my time to select the perfect one. When I looked back at him, I let him see something in my eyes that I'd been hiding for months. The consequences of stealing from someone who's been expecting you to steal from them. The cookie was delicious. I savored the first bite, while Michael's face cycled through confusion, anger, and the first flicker of genuine concern. "What's that supposed to mean?" I finished chewing before I answered, aware that every word was being absorbed by my relatives like the opening lines of a play they hadn't known they'd come to see. "It means, Michael, that some people are much smarter than you think they are." The beauty of Michael's public confession was that it eliminated any need for me to prove the theft had occurred. 23 family members had just heard him admit to taking my money without permission, justifying it with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. I excused myself to use the bathroom, partly to escape the stares and whispered conversations that had erupted around the dessert table, and partly because I needed a moment to process the flood of emotions threatening to crack my carefully maintained composure. Amanda's powder room was decorated in the same overly feminine style that had always made me feel like I was visiting a dollhouse. Pink wallpaper, rose-scented soap, and a mirror framed with artificial pearls. I looked at my reflection and saw what everyone else saw. A 34-year-old woman with shoulder-length brown hair, wearing a sensible blue dress and minimal makeup. Someone who looked predictable, responsible, safe. Someone who looked like an easy target. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. "Can we talk privately? Michael says there's been some misunderstanding about the money." I typed back, "No misunderstanding. He took $47,850 from my account without permission. That's called theft." 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before she responded. "He said you knew about it. Emergency family loan. I never authorized any loan. Check your facts, Amanda." I turned off my phone before she could respond and spent another minute studying my reflection. 6 months of preparation had led to this moment, and I needed to be absolutely certain I was ready for what came next. When I returned to the backyard, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Conversations stopped when I appeared, then resumed in hushed tones. Michael was standing near the grill with my father and Uncle Paul, gesturing animatedly while they listened with increasingly skeptical expressions. Amanda intercepted me near the picnic table where the younger cousins were eating. "Vicky, we need to talk about this situation privately. You're embarrassing Michael in front of the whole family." "I'm embarrassing him." I kept my voice calm, but loud enough for nearby relatives to hear. "Amanda, he just announced to everyone that he stole nearly $50,000 from my bank account. It's not stealing when it's family helping family during a crisis. Did I agree to help with your crisis?" "Well, no. But did I give permission for anyone to access my bank account?" Michael said he thought, "Did I sign any documents authorizing this transfer?" Her mouth opened and closed without sound. Around us, I could feel the family's attention focusing with laser precision on our conversation. "Amanda, those are yes or no questions. Did I give permission for your husband to take my money?" "No," she admitted quietly. "Then what Michael did was theft. The amount makes it grand larceny in this state." Uncle Paul approached our group, his expression troubled. "Girls, what exactly is going on here?" Michael's explaining something about emergency loans and family obligations, but his story isn't making much sense. "Uncle Paul," I said, turning to face him directly. 6 months ago, I discovered that Michael had somehow gained access to my personal financial information. Today, I found out he used that access to steal my entire savings account. Now wait just a minute. Michael's voice boomed across the yard as he strode toward us, my father and 2 other relatives trailing behind him. "You're making this sound like some kind of criminal activity when all I did was borrow money from family during a financial emergency, without permission," I said. "I didn't think I needed permission to access family resources during a crisis." "Michael," my father interjected, his voice carrying the authority that had settled family disputes for decades. "Whose name is on Vicky's bank account?" "Well, hers, but Anne, did she give you written permission to transfer money from her account?" "Not exactly written permission, but we discussed family financial support, Michael." I let my voice cut through his rambling justification. "When exactly did we discuss you taking $47,850 from my savings account?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. The yard had gone completely silent, except for the distant sound of children playing and the hum of the air conditioning unit. I thought, family should help family. answer the question. When did we discuss this specific transaction? We didn't discuss this specific amount, but the principle. So you took my money without asking, without permission, and without any agreement from me. Yes, but in front of witnesses. You just admitted to grand larceny. The word larceny hung in the air like a thunderclap. I watched my family members exchange glances, their expressions shifting from confusion to understanding to alarm. Now hold on, Michael said, his voice rising with panic. This is family business. Nobody's talking about involving lawyers or courts, or any of that nonsense. I smiled again, the same smile that had unsettled him earlier. Michael, you just confessed to a felony in front of 23 witnesses. Whether or not I involve lawyers is entirely up to me. The power dynamic in the backyard had shifted so completely that I could feel it like a change in air pressure. 6 months of planning had positioned me perfectly for this moment, and every move from here would unfold according to a script that only I had read. The family reunion dissolved into clusters of hushed conversations and worried glances. I found myself sitting alone at the picnic table, which suited my purposes perfectly. Let them talk. Let them speculate. Let them slowly realize that the quiet, responsible sister had just backed the family golden boy into a legal corner. My phone buzzed with messages I ignored. I needed to appear calm and in control while internally cataloging every reaction, every alliance forming and shifting around me. This was information I'd need for the next phase. Vicky? Cousin Sarah approached cautiously, sliding onto the bench across from me. She was the family diplomat, the one who usually smoothed over conflicts and restored peace. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation for all this. I'm sure there is too. The reasonable explanation is that Michael stole my money. But surely it's more complicated than that. Maybe there was some miscommunication about family financial arrangements. I looked at Sarah directly. Do you have access to my bank account? Of course not. Does your husband? No. Do your parents? Your siblings? Anyone in this family besides me? No. But then how did Michael access my account to transfer $47,850 unless he did so illegally? Sarah shifted uncomfortably. Maybe Amanda gave him information she thought you'd shared with her. Amanda doesn't have my banking information either. I've never shared my financial details with anyone in this family. Then how did he? Excellent question. I look forward to hearing his explanation. Amanda appeared at my shoulder, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. Vicky, you're being completely unreasonable about this. Michael made a mistake, but you're humiliating our entire family. I'm humiliating your family. Amanda, your husband just confessed to stealing nearly $50,000 from me in front of our relatives. It wasn't stealing. It was a family emergency. Did he ask my permission? He shouldn't have to ask permission to access family resources during a crisis. The casual entitlement in her voice was staggering, but not surprising. This was exactly the attitude I'd been documenting for months. Amanda, sit down. I gestured to the bench beside Sarah. I want to make sure I understand your position clearly. She sat reluctantly, her posture defensive. You believe that during a financial emergency, your husband has the right to access my bank account and take my money without my knowledge or consent. When it's family helping family, yes. And you believe I have an obligation to financially support your household whether I agree to it or not. We're family, Vicky. Family takes care of each other. I see. And what financial support have you and Michael provided to me over the years? We've provided emotional support. We've included you in family events. Amanda, I want you to think very carefully about your next answer. In the past 5 years, how many times have you or Michael given me money, paid for my expenses, or provided any financial assistance to me. She was quiet for several seconds. Well, we invited you to family dinners. That's not financial assistance. We've let you be part of the children's lives. Still not financial assistance. Family relationships aren't just about money, Vicky. You're absolutely right. They're also about respect, consent, and not stealing from each other. Michael materialized beside the table, his face red with frustration. This is getting completely out of hand. Vicky, I need you to call your bank and authorize this transfer retroactively. The audacity was breathtaking. I need to do what now? Call your bank. Explain that this was an authorized family loan. Clean up this misunderstanding before it goes any further. Michael, there's no misunderstanding. You stole my money. I borrowed money during a family emergency, without asking. I shouldn't have to ask. Why not? Because we're family, and being family gives you the right to steal from me. It gives me the right to expect support during a crisis. I stood up slowly, aware that our raised voices had drawn the attention of everyone in the backyard. This was perfect. Every word of this conversation was being witnessed and would be remembered. Michael, I want to make sure I understand your position. You believe that being married to my sister gives you unlimited access to my financial resources without my consent. I believe that family members should help each other during emergencies. And who decides when an emergency exists? The person experiencing the emergency. And who decides how much help is appropriate? The person who needs the help. And the person whose money is being taken has no say in any of these decisions. The person whose money is being taken should trust their family to make reasonable decisions. I looked around the yard at my relatives, who were watching this exchange with fascination and growing alarm. Everyone heard that, right? Michael believes he has the right to take my money without asking, because he's married to my sister, and he decided he needed it. That's not what I said. That's exactly what you said, Michael. And now I'm going to explain what's going to happen next. The yard went completely quiet. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app, setting it on the picnic table where everyone could see it. The small red dot, indicating active recording, seemed to fascinate my relatives. Michael, I'm going to give you one opportunity to explain exactly how you gained access to my bank account and authorized a transfer of $47,850 without my knowledge or consent. You don't need to record this, Vicky. We can handle this as a family. The recording protects both of us. It ensures there's no confusion about what you're claiming happened. Michael glanced around the yard, apparently realizing, for the first time, that his explanation would be preserved forever and heard by people beyond our immediate family. Amanda had some of your financial information from when you helped her with her taxes last year. What specific information did Amanda have? Your bank routing number and account number. I turned to Amanda. Is that true? She looked like she wanted to disappear into the ground. I might have written down some numbers when you were helping me understand the tax forms, and you gave those numbers to Michael without asking my permission. He needed them to verify some financial information for his job application. What job application required my banking information? Michael and Amanda exchanged glances that told me everything I needed to know about the truthfulness of that explanation. Michael, what job application required my personal banking details? It was for a financial services position. They needed references for people with good credit and stable savings accounts. Which company? It was a consulting firm. What's the name of the consulting firm? I don't remember exactly. It was several months ago. You don't remember the name of a company you applied to work for that required you to steal my banking information? I didn't steal anything. Amanda gave me the information voluntarily. Amanda, Did you give Michael permission to use my banking information for anything other than verifying numbers for your tax return? I thought. He said he just needed to confirm some details for a background check. Did you ask my permission before sharing my financial information with anyone? No. But I didn't think so. Neither of you had my permission to share or use my banking information for any purpose beyond helping with tax preparation. We're family, Michael said desperately. Normal privacy rules don't apply between family members. Actually, Michael, banking privacy laws apply regardless of family relationships. What you've described is identity theft and unauthorized access to financial accounts. The color drained from his face. Now wait a minute, you used information obtained without my consent to access my bank account and transfer my money without authorization. That's a federal crime. I didn't commit any crimes. I borrowed money from family during an emergency. What emergency? Amanda and I are behind on the mortgage. We were going to lose the house. When were you planning to tell me about this emergency? We were working up to it. We didn't want to worry you, unless we absolutely had to ask for help. So your plan was to steal my money first and tell me about the emergency later. Our plan was to borrow the money temporarily and pay it back before you noticed. The honesty of this admission rippled through our audience like a shockwave. Michael had just confessed to stealing with the intention of covering up the crime. How exactly were you planning to pay back $47,850? I'm expecting a bonus from my new job. What new job? You said you lost your job, which is why you needed my money. I meant I'm expecting to get a new job that would pay a bonus. Michael, do you hear yourself? You stole my life savings based on the hope that you might someday get a job that might pay you enough to pay me back. When you put it like that, it sounds unreasonable. It doesn't just sound unreasonable. It is unreasonable. It's also criminal. I stopped the recording and put my phone back in my purse. Around us, the family reunion had transformed into a surreal courtroom drama, with picnic tables serving as jury seating. Michael, I'm going to give you until tomorrow morning to return every penny of my money to my account. I can't do that. I already used it to catch up on the mortgage payments. Then you have a serious problem. Vicky, please, be reasonable. I can set up a payment plan. I can pay you back monthly over time. You can set up a payment plan with the district attorney when he explains the terms of your plea agreement. You're not seriously going to press charges over a family misunderstanding. I looked at him steadily. Michael, 6 months ago, I might have been foolish enough to call this a misunderstanding. But you see, I've been expecting you to steal from me for quite some time now. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've been documenting your financial behavior patterns for months. And tomorrow, you're going to discover exactly how thoroughly I prepared for this moment. The fear in his eyes was deeply satisfying, but I kept my expression neutral. The real satisfaction would come when my preparation paid off in ways he couldn't even imagine yet. That evening, I sat in my apartment reviewing the files I'd been building for 6 months, the manila folder labeled Michael and Amp. Amanda. Financial documentation had grown thick with evidence. Photographs, recorded conversations, and carefully documented patterns of behavior. It had started innocently enough. Last Christmas, I'd helped Amanda organize her tax documents and noticed some irregularities in their financial situation that didn't match the story they'd been telling the family. Michael claimed to be between jobs, but their bank statements showed regular deposits that were too large and too consistent for unemployment benefits. When I'd asked Amanda about the income sources, she'd been vague and defensive. That had triggered my curiosity rather than my suspicion, until I noticed that several of the deposits were made on dates that corresponded with family events where I'd been present. The pattern had taken 3 months to fully understand. Michael had been going through my purse during family gatherings, photographing my financial documents, and using that information to build a profile of my banking habits. The deposits in their account came from small loans obtained using falsified income that closely matched my actual salary and savings patterns. He'd been identity shopping, using my financial stability to qualify for credit while maintaining plausible deniability if caught. If questioned, he could claim Amanda had mixed up some paperwork or that there had been confusion about shared family resources. It was actually a clever scheme, too clever to be impulsive. My phone rang, interrupting my review. Amanda's name appeared on the screen. "Vicky, we need to talk. Michael is panicking about what you said this afternoon." He should be panicking. You can't seriously be planning to involve the police in a family financial dispute. It's not a dispute, Amanda. It's theft. But he's family. You don't send family to prison over money problems. Amanda, I want you to think about this very carefully. If a stranger had accessed your bank account and taken $47,000 without permission, what would you do? That's different. How is it different? Because this is family. And we know Michael isn't a criminal. He just made a mistake during a stressful time. Amanda, making a mistake is forgetting to return borrowed change. Taking someone's life savings without permission is a felony. You're being completely unreasonable. I'm being exactly as reasonable as someone should be when they've been robbed. Michael didn't rob you. He borrowed money during a family emergency, without asking. He shouldn't have to ask. You don't have kids or a mortgage or real financial responsibilities. You can afford to help family members who are struggling. There it was. The fundamental assumption that had enabled 6 months of financial manipulation. My money wasn't really mine, because my life wasn't as important as theirs. Amanda, do you remember when I was laid off 2 years ago? Yes, but you found another job pretty quickly. Do you remember how I managed to pay rent and groceries while I was unemployed? You had savings. Do you remember anyone in the family offering to help me with expenses during that time? She was quiet. Do you remember Michael or anyone else checking on my financial situation or offering emergency support? We knew you'd be fine. You're good with money. So when I had an emergency, I was expected to handle it myself because I'm responsible. But when you and Michael have an emergency, I'm expected to fund the solution whether I agree to it or not. Family situations are complicated. No, Amanda. This situation is very simple. Your husband stole my money. He has admitted to stealing my money. He has no plan to return my money. And you're asking me to pretend that's acceptable because we share DNA. What do you want us to do? We can't give you back money we've already spent. Then you should have thought about that before you spent it. Vicky, please. Michael is a good man who made a mistake. Don't destroy his life over this. Michael destroyed his own life when he decided to commit a felony. I'm just declining to help him avoid the consequences. What if we could work out some kind of payment plan? Michael could pay you back monthly over several years. With what money? You just said he doesn't have a job. He's looking for work. He'll find something soon. Amanda, even if Michael found a job tomorrow, paying back $47,000 would take years. And that's assuming he could find work that pays enough to cover your living expenses and loan repayment. So what's your solution? Send him to prison? My solution is to let the legal system handle a criminal matter appropriately. And what about me? What about your nieces and nephews? If Michael goes to prison, how am I supposed to support the children? The same way you'd support them if he'd been arrested for robbing a bank instead of robbing me. That's completely different. Amanda, explain to me how stealing from your sister-in-law is morally different from stealing from a bank. She hung up without answering. I returned to my files and continued my review. Tomorrow would bring phone calls to banks, law enforcement, and legal professionals. But tonight was for preparation and final documentation. 6 months of evidence was about to serve its purpose. I spent Monday morning at the main branch of my bank, meeting with the fraud department and providing documentation of the unauthorized transfer. The bank manager, Mr. Harrison, reviewed my case with the kind of professional concern that suggested he'd handled similar situations before. Miss Carter, based on what you're telling me, this appears to be a clear case of identity theft and unauthorized account access. We'll need to file reports with both local law enforcement and federal authorities. I understand. What information do you need from me? Everything you have about how the perpetrator gained access to your account credentials. Any documentation of their admission to the theft. Names and contact information for witnesses to those admissions. I opened my briefcase and produced a folder containing printed copies of text messages, photographs of my stolen documents, the recorded confession from the family reunion, and a detailed timeline of discovery. Mr. Harrison's eyebrows rose as he reviewed the material. Miss Carter, this is remarkably thorough documentation. How long have you been building this case? 6 months. I suspected something was happening with my financial information, so I started tracking everything. And you recorded the perpetrator confessing to the theft in front of witnesses. 23 witnesses, including several family members who can verify the accuracy of the recording. Miss Carter, I have to ask, why didn't you contact us earlier if you suspected unauthorized access to your account? Because I needed evidence. Suspicion isn't proof. I needed documented evidence of what was being planned and how it would be executed. Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. This level of preparation suggests you expected this specific crime to occur. I expected some kind of financial theft to occur. I documented everything so I'd be prepared regardless of how it happened. And the perpetrator is your brother-in-law. My sister's husband. This is going to be very difficult for your family. Yes, it is. But families recover from difficult situations. They don't recover from enabling criminal behavior. After completing the bank paperwork, I drove to the police station and requested to speak with a detective about financial crimes. Detective Walsh was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and the patient demeanor of someone who'd heard every possible story about money and family drama. Miss Carter, I've reviewed the initial report from your bank. Walk me through what happened from your perspective. I provided the same timeline and documentation I'd given to the bank, including the recorded confession from the family reunion. Miss Carter, this recording captures your brother-in-law admitting to taking money from your account without permission? Yes. He also explains how he obtained my banking information and his justification for the theft. Detective Walsh listened to the entire recording, taking notes throughout. When it finished, she looked up at me with something approaching respect. Miss Carter, in 20 years of investigating financial crimes, I've rarely seen a case with this level of documentation from the victim. Most people discover the theft and call us immediately, but they don't have any evidence beyond the missing money. I've been planning for this possibility for months. Why? Because I've been watching my brother-in-law's behavior patterns, and everything indicated that he was building towards some kind of financial crime involving my resources. Can you elaborate on those behavior patterns? I pulled out another folder containing photographs and dated observations. Michael has been increasingly interested in my financial situation over the past year. He asks questions about my job, my savings, my investment accounts. He makes comments about how single people don't need as much money as families. He's been going through my purse during family gatherings. You have evidence of that. I have photographs of him photographing my documents when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Detective Walsh reviewed the photos. Miss Carter, These images show him with your personal papers, credit card statements, bank deposit slips, tax documents, anything with financial information that he found in my purse during family events. And you photographed him doing this rather than confronting him immediately. I needed evidence of a pattern, not just one incident I could have misunderstood. Miss Carter, I'm going to ask you a direct question. Did you set a trap for your brother-in-law? I considered the question carefully. Detective Walsh, I documented behavior that concerned me and preserved evidence of crimes as they occurred. Whether that constitutes a trap depends on your definition. Did you take any action specifically designed to encourage him to commit a crime? No. I took actions designed to document crimes that he was already planning to commit. And you're certain he was planning this theft? Detective Walsh, someone doesn't spend months learning another person's financial patterns and gaining access to their personal information unless they're planning to use that information inappropriately. She nodded. Miss Carter, based on this evidence, I'm going to recommend that the district attorney file charges for identity theft, unauthorized access to financial accounts, and grand larceny. What does that mean for Michael? It means he's looking at potential federal charges and significant prison time. Federal sentencing guidelines for this amount of money are serious. And for my family, Miss Carter, that's not really a legal question. But I will say that families often struggle more with the aftermath of financial crimes than with the legal process itself. As I drove home from the police station, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 6 months. Complete emotional exhaustion. The adrenaline that had sustained me through months of planning and documentation was finally wearing off, leaving me to process the reality of what I'd just set in motion. My phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts from family members. I turned it off and drove in silence, already knowing that the hardest part wasn't behind me. The hardest part was what came next. By Tuesday morning, news of Michael's situation had spread through our extended family like wildfire. My phone showed 37 missed calls and 62 text messages when I turned it back on. The messages ranged from supportive to horrified to accusatory. Cousin James, Vicky, heard about the situation with Michael. Whatever he did, involving the police seems extreme. Can we talk? Aunt Patricia, sweetheart, family problems should stay within the family. Call me. Uncle Paul. Victoria, your father says Michael admitted to taking money from your account. If true, you did the right thing reporting it. Stand your ground. My mother, Vicky, we need to discuss this situation immediately. Michael is family, and we need to find a way to work this out without destroying everyone's lives. My father, proud of you for standing up for yourself. Don't let anyone pressure you into backing down. The divide in family opinion was exactly what I'd expected. Some relatives understood that theft is theft, regardless of family relationships. Others believed that family loyalty should override legal and ethical considerations. I made coffee and reviewed my schedule for the day. Meeting with a criminal attorney at 10. Lunch with Detective Walsh to provide additional documentation. And a 2 o'clock appointment with my financial advisor to discuss the impact of the theft on my long-term financial planning. My doorbell rang at 8:30. Through the peephole, I could see Amanda standing on my porch, holding a box of tissues and looking like she hadn't slept in days. I opened the door but didn't invite her inside. Vicky, we need to talk. I don't think we do. Please, 5 minutes. I need you to understand what you're doing to our family. Against my better judgment, I let her into my living room. She sat on the edge of my couch, clutching the tissue box like a lifeline. Vicky, Michael is devastated. He knows he made a mistake, but he never intended for things to go this far. Amanda, he stole $47,000. How much farther could things go? He's talking to a lawyer about plea bargain options. The attorney says he could be looking at years in federal prison. That's usually what happens when people commit federal crimes. But he's never been in trouble before. He's a good man who made one terrible decision during a stressful time. Amanda, this wasn't one decision. This was months of planning. He spent months learning my financial patterns, gaining access to my personal information, and positioning himself to steal from me. Maybe he was just trying to understand family financial resources in case there was ever an emergency. By going through my purse and photographing my private documents without permission. She didn't have an answer for that. Amanda, what do you want from me? I want you to consider the impact this will have on the children. If Michael goes to prison, I'll be a single mother with 4 kids and no way to support them. You'll be in the same situation as millions of other single mothers who find ways to manage. That's easy for you to say. You don't have children depending on you. You're right. I don't have children. I have savings accounts that I've spent years building so I could handle emergencies and plan for my future. Savings accounts that your husband stole. Vicky, I'm begging you, talk to the police. Explain that this was a family misunderstanding. Tell them you don't want to press charges. I can't do that. Why not? Because it wasn't a misunderstanding, and I do want to press charges. Why are you being so cold about this? This isn't like you. Amanda, exactly how am I supposed to react when I discover that my sister and brother-in-law have been planning to steal from me for months? We weren't planning to steal from you. Then explain how Michael obtained my banking information and knew exactly how much money I had in my savings account. You know Michael. He pays attention to details. Amanda, Michael knew the exact balance in my account down to the penny. The only way he could know that information is if he'd been accessing my account regularly. The implications of what I'd just said hit her visibly. You think he was spying on your bank account? I know he was accessing my bank account. The bank has records of unauthorized logins from an IP address registered to your home internet service. She stared at me. How do you know that? Because I asked them to investigate. When? 2 months ago, when I noticed unusual activity on my account. You've known about this for 2 months and you didn't say anything. I've been documenting everything and building a legal case, which is exactly what you do when you discover that family members are committing crimes against you. Amanda started crying. Vicky, you set a trap for us. No, Amanda, I documented crimes that were already being committed. There's a difference. You could have talked to us. You could have asked Michael directly if something was wrong, and given him the opportunity to cover his tracks and find a different way to steal from me. You don't trust us at all, do you? Amanda, your husband has been illegally accessing my bank account for months, and today you're asking me to lie to police to help him avoid consequences for stealing my life savings. Why would I trust you? She stopped crying and looked at me with something approaching hatred. You're destroying our family over money. No, Amanda. Michael destroyed our family when he decided to steal from me. I'm just declining to help you pretend it didn't happen. After she left, I sat in my living room thinking about the conversation. For the first time, I'd seen the anger beneath Amanda's tears, the resentment that had probably been building for years. My phone rang. My mother's contact photo smiled up at me from the screen. I answered on the 4th ring. Victoria Marie, we need to have a serious conversation. When my mother used my full name, it meant she'd moved beyond discussion into decree mode. This was going to be unpleasant. My mother's house smelled like cinnamon rolls and disappointment when I arrived for our serious conversation. She'd been baking, which she only did when she was either celebrating something wonderful or processing something terrible. Sit down, Victoria. She gestured toward the kitchen table where she'd laid out coffee cups and plates like we were having a pleasant social visit instead of a family tribunal. Mum, before you start, I want you to understand something. I didn't create this situation. I'm responding to crimes that were committed against me. Victoria, family relationships are more complicated than legal definitions of crime and innocence. Not when someone steals $47,000 from you. Michael made a mistake. Michael committed multiple felonies over several months. That's not a mistake. That's a criminal lifestyle. My mother set down her coffee cup with enough force to make it rattle against the saucer. Victoria, you are going to destroy Amanda's family over money that you can afford to lose. How do you know what I can afford to lose? You don't have a mortgage, or children, or significant financial responsibilities. $47,000 isn't going to leave you homeless or hungry. Mum, that money represents 3 years of careful saving. It was my emergency fund and the foundation of my retirement planning. And Amanda and Michael's situation is an actual emergency happening right now. Their emergency doesn't give them the right to steal my emergency fund. Victoria, sometimes family members have to make sacrifices to help each other through difficult times. I agree completely. When did Michael sacrifice anything to help me? That's not the point. That's exactly the point, Mum. I'm always the family member who's expected to sacrifice for everyone else's benefit, and I'm never the family member who receives help when I need it. You've never needed help, because I'm responsible with money and I plan for emergencies. But somehow my responsibility becomes everyone else's emergency fund. My mother stood up and walked to the kitchen window, looking out at the garden where she'd taught me to plant vegetables when I was 8 years old. Victoria, what do you want me to say? That Michael was right to take your money? I want you to say that Michael was wrong to take my money. Of course he was wrong, but he's also Amanda's husband and the father of your nieces and nephews, and I'm your daughter. Doesn't that matter? Of course it matters. Then why are you asking me to sacrifice my financial security to protect someone who stole from me? Because families protect each other. Michael didn't protect me when he decided to steal my savings. Victoria, you're being deliberately obtuse. You know what I mean. Actually, I don't know what you mean. Explain to me how protecting Michael from the consequences of committing crimes against me is the same thing as family loyalty. My mother turned back toward me, and for the first time in the conversation, she looked uncertain rather than disappointed. Victoria, what happens to Amanda and the children if Michael goes to prison? They adjust to their new situation and find ways to manage, just like any other family that faces financial challenges. That's very easy to say when it's not your children who will suffer. Mum, whose fault is it that the children might suffer? Michael's, obviously. But, then, why are you asking me to clean up the mess he created, instead of asking him to fix his own mistakes? Because you have the power to fix this situation. No, I don't. I have the power to enable Michael's criminal behavior by declining to report it. That's not the same thing as fixing the situation. What's the difference? The difference is that fixing the situation requires Michael to take responsibility for his actions and make changes to ensure they don't happen again. Enabling Michael means I absorb the financial loss, and he continues believing that stealing from family is acceptable. My mother sat back down at the table. Victoria, I've never seen you this cold and calculating. I've never been robbed by family before. You're not even angry. You're just methodical. I'm furious, Mum, but I'm channeling my anger into making sure this situation is handled properly, instead of letting emotions cloud my judgment. What does handled properly mean to you? It means Michael faces appropriate consequences for committing crimes. Amanda learns that enabling criminal behavior doesn't protect her family, and I recover my stolen money through legal channels. And if Michael goes to prison, Then he serves the sentence that federal judges determine is appropriate for his crimes. Victoria, you're talking about your brother-in-law like he's a stranger. Michael made himself a stranger when he decided to steal from me. Family members don't commit felonies against each other. My mother was quiet for several minutes. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller than before. Victoria, what do you need from me? I need you to understand that reporting crimes isn't the same thing as creating family problems. Criminals create family problems. Victims just decide whether or not to seek justice, and you've decided to seek justice. I've decided that stealing $47,000 should have consequences, even if those consequences destroy Amanda's family. Mom. Amanda's family was destroyed the moment Michael decided to become a criminal. I'm just declining to help everyone pretend otherwise. When I left my mother's house, I felt emotionally drained but resolved. The family pressure campaign was going exactly as I'd predicted it would. Everyone was more concerned about avoiding consequences than addressing the behavior that had created those consequences. But I'd been preparing for this pressure for months, and I wasn't going to be guilted into enabling criminal behavior just to preserve the illusion of family harmony. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Walsh. Miss Carter, we've received the bank records showing unauthorized account access from your brother-in-law's IP address. The district attorney wants to meet with you Thursday morning to discuss charges. Are you available? I typed back, yes. What time? 9 a.m. Bring any additional documentation you have. I'll be there. The legal process was moving forward with exactly the kind of efficiency and professionalism that had been missing from my family's response to Michael's crimes. Tomorrow, I would discover what justice looked like in the real world, beyond the boundaries of family loyalty and emotional manipulation. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel sharp and clear. I dressed carefully for my meeting with the district attorney, choosing a navy blue suit that conveyed seriousness without appearing overly formal. The district attorney's office occupied 2 floors of a downtown building that had been designed to convey authority and stability. I arrived 15 minutes early and spent the time reviewing my documentation one final time. Miss Carter, a young woman in a professional blazer, appeared in the waiting area. I'm Assistant District Attorney Karen Phillips. Thank you for coming in today. Her office was smaller than I'd expected, with law books lining the walls and a desk covered with case files. She gestured for me to sit across from her desk while she opened a folder with my name on the tab. Miss Carter, I've reviewed the evidence you provided to Detective Walsh, and I have to say, this is one of the most thoroughly documented cases I've handled. Walk me through how you assembled this information. For the next hour, I explained the timeline of my suspicions, the evidence-gathering process, and the confrontation at the family reunion. Ada Phillips took notes throughout and asked detailed questions about my methods and motivations. Miss Carter, I need to ask you directly. Did you take any actions designed to entrap your brother-in-law or encourage him to commit additional crimes? No. I documented crimes that were already being committed and preserved evidence of his admissions to those crimes. And you're certain that the $47,850 transfer was unauthorized? Completely certain. I never gave permission for anyone to access my account or transfer money from it. Miss Carter, based on the evidence you've provided, I'm prepared to file charges against your brother-in-law for identity theft, unauthorized access to computer systems, and grand larceny in the first degree. What does that mean in practical terms? It means he's looking at potential federal charges that carry sentences of 5 to 15 years in prison, depending on his criminal history and willingness to accept responsibility, and the likelihood of conviction. With this level of documentation, very high. Miss Carter, Most financial crime cases depend on circumstantial evidence and victim testimony. You have recorded confessions, bank records showing unauthorized access, and documented evidence of premeditation. What happens next? We'll issue a warrant for his arrest within the next few days. He'll be formally charged and given the opportunity to retain counsel. If he's smart, his attorney will advise him to negotiate a plea agreement. What kind of plea agreement? That depends on his willingness to accept responsibility and make restitution. If he pleads guilty and agrees to pay back the stolen money, we might consider reduced charges. And if he doesn't plead guilty, then we go to trial, and given this evidence, he'll likely be convicted on all charges and sentenced to the maximum penalties. Ada Phillips closed the folder and looked at me directly. Miss Carter, I need to warn you about something. Financial crimes within families often create significant emotional and social pressure on victims to drop charges. I'm already experiencing that pressure. How are you handling it? By remembering that dropping charges would send a message to my family that stealing from me is acceptable as long as they call it a family emergency. That's a mature perspective, but family pressure can be intense. If you change your mind about pursuing charges, you need to let us know immediately. I won't be changing my mind. Miss Carter, can I ask you a personal question? What outcome are you hoping for from this process? I want my money returned. I want Michael to face appropriate consequences for his crimes, and I want my family to understand that I won't be a victim of financial abuse just because we share DNA. Those are reasonable goals, but achieving them may come at a significant cost to your family relationships. Ada Phillips. Family relationships that depend on me accepting criminal behavior aren't relationships worth preserving. After leaving the district attorney's office, I drove to my bank to review the additional security measures we'd discussed. The fraud department had flagged my account for enhanced monitoring and required dual authentication for any wire transfers or major transactions. My phone rang as I was signing paperwork. Amanda's number appeared on the screen. Vicky, you need to stop this legal process immediately. Hello, Amanda. How are you today? Don't pretend this is a social call. Michael's attorney says the district attorney is planning to file formal charges tomorrow. That sounds about right. Vicky, do you understand what you're doing? Michael could go to prison for years. Michael could have thought about that before he decided to steal $47,000 from me. You're destroying our family over money. No, Amanda. Michael destroyed our family when he committed multiple felonies against me. I'm just declining to help him avoid consequences. What do you want from us? We've already admitted he made a mistake. I want my money returned to my account. We can't return money we've already spent. Then you should have thought about that before you spent it. Vicky, please, think about the children. Think about what this will do to them. Amanda, I've thought about the children. I've also thought about what message we send them if we teach them that stealing from family is acceptable, as long as you apologize afterward. You're being completely unreasonable. I'm being exactly as reasonable as someone should be when their brother-in-law commits federal crimes against them. Michael isn't a criminal. He's a good man who made a desperate mistake. Good men don't spend months planning to steal from their wives' sisters. Criminals do. I hate what you've become, Vicky. You used to care about family. I still care about family. That's why I'm holding family members accountable when they commit crimes. After she hung up, I sat in my car thinking about the conversation. Amanda's anger was escalating as the legal consequences became more real, but her focus remained on avoiding those consequences rather than addressing the behavior that had created them. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Vicky, heard from your mother about the situation. Stand your ground. Love you. It was the first unconditional support I'd received from anyone in the family, and it meant more than I'd expected it would. Tomorrow, the arrest warrant would be issued, and Michael would discover that stealing from family members carries the same legal consequences as stealing from strangers. The difference was that strangers wouldn't spend months trying to guilt him out of facing those consequences. Friday morning brought an unexpected phone call at 6 a.m. Michael's voice was shaky and desperate when I answered. "Vicky, I need to talk to you before the police arrest me." "Michael, you should be talking to your attorney, not to me." "I am talking to my attorney. He says I need to try to work something out with you before formal charges are filed." "What kind of something?" "A payment plan. Full restitution over time. Maybe a civil settlement instead of criminal charges." "Michael, you stole $47,000. A payment plan doesn't change the fact that you committed federal crimes." "Vicky, please. I'm begging you. I know I messed up, but I can't go to prison. I can't leave Amanda and the kids with no support." "You should have thought about Amanda and the kids before you decided to steal from me." "I wasn't thinking clearly. The stress of the mortgage payments and the job situation. I made a terrible decision during a crisis." "Michael, this wasn't one decision during a crisis. You spent months accessing my bank account illegally, learning my financial patterns, and planning how to steal my money. I was trying to understand our family's overall financial situation in case there was an emergency. By spying on my personal bank account without permission, I thought family members should know about each other's resources in case anyone needed help." "Did you share your financial information with me?" "That's different." "How is it different? We're the ones who needed help." "So family financial transparency only flows in one direction, from the person with savings to the person with problems." "Vicky, you're twisting everything around." "I'm trying to apologize and make things right." "Michael, what would making things right look like to you?" "I pay you back monthly, maybe $2,000 a month until the debt is cleared. You tell the district attorney this was a family misunderstanding that we've resolved privately." "How are you planning to pay me $2,000 a month when you don't have a job?" "I'll find work. I'll do whatever it takes." "Michael, even if you found work immediately, paying back $47,000 at $2,000 a month would take 2 years. That assumes you can find a job that pays enough to cover your family's living expenses and loan repayment." "I'll make it work." "With what money? You just told the family that you were behind on mortgage payments even when you had whatever income you were earning before. How are you going to cover mortgage payments and $2,000 in monthly restitution?" "I'll figure something out." "Michael, you're asking me to accept a repayment plan that's mathematically impossible, based on promises from someone who just confessed to stealing from me. So what do you want me to do? Go to prison? I want you to face the legal consequences of the crimes you committed." "Vicky, I never meant for things to go this far." "How far did you mean for things to go?" "I thought I could borrow the money temporarily and pay it back before you noticed." "So your plan was to steal my money and cover up the theft?" "My plan was to handle a family emergency without creating additional stress for anyone. By committing federal crimes, I didn't think of it as committing crimes. I thought of it as accessing family resources during a crisis." "Michael, accessing someone else's bank account without permission is a crime regardless of your motivation. But we're family. Being family doesn't exempt you from federal banking laws." "Vicky, what do you want from me? What would it take for you to drop the charges?" "I want my $47,000 returned to my account immediately." "I can't do that. I already told you we spent the money. Then we don't have anything else to discuss." "Vicky, please. Think about what this will do to Amanda and the children." "Michael, I've been thinking about Amanda and the children. I've also been thinking about what message we send them if we teach them that stealing from family is acceptable. You're going to send their father to prison to make a point?" "No, Michael. You're going to prison because you committed federal crimes. I'm just declining to help you avoid the consequences." After I hung up, I felt something I hadn't expected. Sadness. Not sadness about pursuing charges, but sadness about the complete absence of genuine accountability in Michael's apology. He was sorry he'd been caught. He was sorry about the consequences. But he wasn't sorry about the choices that had led to this moment. And he wasn't taking responsibility for the impact his crimes had had on me. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Walsh. "Miss Carter, arrest warrant issued this morning. We'll be executing it this afternoon. Wanted to give you advance notice in case family members contact you." I typed back, "Thank you for the heads up." By evening, the arrest would be complete, and Michael would be processing the reality that stealing from family carries exactly the same legal consequences as stealing from strangers. The family pressure campaign would escalate dramatically once he was actually in custody, but I'd been preparing for that pressure for months. I spent the rest of the morning reviewing my calendar for the next few weeks and mentally preparing for what was likely to be the most difficult period of this entire process. The legal system would handle Michael's crimes appropriately. Whether my family would handle the consequences appropriately remained to be seen. The call came at 3:30 in the afternoon. Amanda's number appeared on my screen, and I could hear chaos in the background when I answered. "Vicky, they arrested Michael at his job, in front of everyone. He's in jail, and they're saying he can't get bail until Monday morning. Amanda, I'm sorry this is difficult for you, but this is the normal process when someone is arrested for federal crimes. The children are asking why Daddy isn't coming home. What am I supposed to tell them? You tell them the truth in age-appropriate language, that Daddy made some serious mistakes and has to face consequences. I can't tell them their father is in jail. Amanda, where did you think Michael was going to go when he was arrested? Did you think they'd give him a warning and send him home? I thought maybe they'd just issue a citation or make him pay a fine for stealing $47,000. Amanda, this is a felony. Multiple felonies. Vicky, you have to do something. You have to call the police and tell them this was a misunderstanding." "I can't do that because it wasn't a misunderstanding. You can tell them we've worked out a family agreement." "We haven't worked out a family agreement. Michael called me this morning offering to pay me back over 2 years with money he doesn't have. But that shows he's trying to make things right. Amanda, offering to pay back stolen money doesn't undo the crime of stealing it. Vicky, please, I'm begging you." Michael is terrified. He's never been in jail before. Most people who commit their first felony are terrified when they're arrested. That's normal. How can you be so cold about this? Michael is family. Michael stopped being family when he decided to steal from me. That's not how family works. Amanda, explain to me how family works. Because, from my perspective, it looks like family means I'm expected to fund your emergencies, whether I agree to it or not. And I'm expected to help you avoid consequences when you commit crimes against me. Family means we support each other during difficult times. When have you and Michael supported me during difficult times? We've included you in family events. Including me in family events isn't the same thing as financial or practical support. You've never needed support. Because I'm responsible with money, and I handle my problems myself. But somehow my responsibility becomes your emergency fund. Vicky, what do you want from us? I want you to stop asking me to fix problems that Michael created with his criminal behavior. So you're just going to let him sit in jail over the weekend? Amanda, Michael is in jail because he committed crimes. I didn't put him there. The legal system put him there. But you could get him out. No, I couldn't. Even if I dropped all charges tomorrow, Michael would still face federal charges based on the evidence I've already provided. The legal process is out of my hands now. What do you mean it's out of your hands? I mean the district attorney has enough evidence to prosecute Michael whether I cooperate or not. The recorded confession, the bank records, the documentation of unauthorized account access, all of that evidence exists independently of my willingness to participate. So even if you forgave him, he'd still go to prison? Amanda, this was never about forgiveness. This was about accountability. Michael committed federal crimes, and federal crimes have federal consequences. Vicky, I need help with the children this weekend. Can you watch them while I meet with lawyers and try to figure out how to get Michael released? The request was so tone-deaf that I almost laughed. Amanda, you want me to provide free childcare so you can help the man who stole my life savings avoid consequences for his crimes. The children didn't do anything wrong. You're right. The children are innocent, which is why I feel sorry for them that their father chose to become a criminal. Vicky, I don't have anyone else to help me. Amanda, you have the same resources that any other single parent has when their partner is arrested for committing crimes. But I'm not a single parent. This is temporary. Amanda, Michael is looking at 5 to 15 years in federal prison. Even if he takes a plea deal, this isn't temporary. The silence on the other end of the line was profound. 5 to 15 years. That's the sentencing range for the crimes he committed. But he's never been in trouble before. First-time offenders still face serious penalties for serious crimes. Vicky, you can't let this happen. I'm not letting anything happen. I'm letting the legal system work the way it's designed to work. But what about our family? What about the children? Amanda, your family situation is the result of Michael's choices. The children's situation is the result of Michael's choices. I'm not responsible for fixing the problems that Michael created when he decided to steal from me. So you're just abandoning us. I'm declining to fix problems that aren't mine to fix. Vicky, I don't understand what happened to you. You used to care about family. I still care about family. I just refuse to enable criminal behavior in the name of family loyalty. After Amanda hung up, I sat in my apartment thinking about the conversation. The disconnect between her expectations and reality was staggering. She genuinely seemed to believe that Michael's crimes were my responsibility to resolve. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Victoria, Amanda called me crying. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Time to fix this situation. I typed back. The situation will be fixed when Michael serves an appropriate sentence for his crimes and returns my stolen money. That's not what I mean, and you know it. Mom, that's exactly what I mean. Michael committed federal crimes. Federal crimes have federal consequences. Victoria, you're being deliberately obtuse. Family situations require family solutions. This stopped being a family situation when Michael decided to steal my life savings. She didn't respond. I spent the evening reviewing my calendar for the upcoming week. Monday morning would bring Michael's bail hearing, and I'd been asked to provide a victim impact statement about the theft. The family pressure would intensify dramatically once they realized that federal charges couldn't be undone by family negotiations. But I'd been preparing for this pressure for months, and I wasn't going to sacrifice my financial security or my principles to protect a criminal from facing appropriate consequences, even if that criminal happened to be related to me by marriage. Monday morning's bail hearing took place in a federal courthouse downtown. I arrived early and was surprised to see several of my relatives in the gallery, including my parents, Aunt Patricia, and Cousin James. They watched me walk to the front of the courtroom with expressions ranging from supportive to accusatory. Michael appeared in an orange jumpsuit, looking haggard and defeated. His attorney, a tired-looking man in an expensive suit, whispered urgently to him while they reviewed paperwork. The Honorable Judge Martinez presiding, announced the bailiff as a stern-looking woman in her 50s took the bench. This is the matter of United States versus Michael Thompson, case number 23 to 4891. Mr. Thompson is charged with identity theft, unauthorized access to computer systems, and grand larceny in the first degree. Counsel, are you ready to proceed? Ada Phillips stood at the prosecution table. Ready, Your Honor. Michael's attorney stood beside him. Ready for the defense, Your Honor. Miss Phillips, please summarize the charges for the record. Your Honor, the defendant systematically accessed the victim's personal financial information without authorization over a period of several months, then used that information to transfer $47,850 from her savings account to his own account without her knowledge or consent. The defendant has admitted to these crimes in recorded statements made in front of multiple witnesses. Mr. Davidson, how does your client plead? Michael's attorney glanced at him nervously. Not guilty, Your Honor. Judge Martinez raised an eyebrow. Mr. Davidson, I have a recorded confession from your client admitting to the crimes. Are you certain about that plea? We're exploring our options, Your Honor. Mr. Thompson, you have the right to plead not guilty, but I want to ensure you understand that the prosecution has substantial evidence against you, including your own admissions. Do you wish to consult with counsel before entering your plea? Michael leaned toward his attorney for a whispered conversation, then straightened. Your Honor, I'd like to change my plea to guilty. His attorney looked surprised but didn't object. Mr. Thompson, by pleading guilty, you're admitting that you committed the crimes as charged. Do you understand that? Yes, Your Honor. And you're making this plea voluntarily, without coercion or promises of specific sentencing outcomes. Yes, Your Honor. Miss Phillips, does the prosecution have a recommendation regarding bail? Your Honor, given the defendant's admission to multiple federal crimes involving significant financial theft, and given that the victim has expressed concern about additional unauthorized access to her financial accounts, we recommend detention without bail. Michael's attorney stood quickly. Your Honor, my client has no prior criminal record and strong family ties to the community. He's not a flight risk and poses no danger to the public. Miss Phillips, do you have evidence that the defendant poses a continued threat to the victim? Your Honor, the defendant gained unauthorized access to the victim's financial accounts over several months before committing the theft. Given the sophisticated nature of his crimes and his access to the victim through family relationships, we believe he poses a continued risk of financial crimes against the victim. Judge Martinez looked at me. Miss Carter, you're the victim in this case? I stood. Yes, Your Honor. Do you have concerns about Mr. Thompson being released on bail? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Thompson has demonstrated that he considers my financial resources to be available for his use without my consent. I'm concerned that release would provide him with additional opportunities to access my personal information or accounts. Mr. Thompson, do you have anything to say regarding bail? Michael stood shakily. Your Honor, I made a terrible mistake, but I'm not a danger to anyone. I just need the opportunity to work and try to pay back what I took. Mr. Thompson, the time for paying back what you took was before you took it. You've pleaded guilty to serious federal crimes. Bail is set at $150,000, cash only. You're to have no contact with the victim, no access to any financial accounts other than your own, and you're to surrender your passport. Michael's attorney whispered something to him, and I could see the shock on his face as he realized the implications of a $150,000 cash bond. Your Honor, his attorney said, my client's family doesn't have access to that amount of cash. Then your client will remain in custody until trial. Mr. Davidson, Sentencing is scheduled for 6 weeks from today. I strongly encourage you to work with the prosecution on a plea agreement. As the hearing concluded, I was approached by Ada Phillips. Miss Carter, that went very well from our perspective. Mr. Thompson's guilty plea eliminates the need for a trial, but we still need to determine sentencing. What does that mean for me? It means you'll have the opportunity to provide a victim impact statement at sentencing. It also means that restitution will be part of whatever sentence the judge imposes. What are the chances I'll recover my money? With a federal conviction, restitution is mandatory. The question is how quickly you'll receive it, which depends on Mr. Thompson's ability to pay. As I left the courthouse, I was intercepted by my family members who had attended the hearing. "Victoria," my mother said firmly, "we need to talk." "About what?" "About the fact that you just ensured Michael will spend the next 6 weeks in jail instead of working to pay you back." "Mom, Michael chose to plead guilty to federal crimes. The judge set bail based on those crimes. You could have asked the prosecutor to recommend lower bail." "I could have, but I didn't." "Why not?" "Because Michael has proven that he considers my financial resources to be available for his use without permission. I don't want him released until there are legal safeguards in place." Aunt Patricia stepped forward. "Victoria, I understand you're angry, but keeping Michael in jail doesn't help anyone. It helps me feel secure that he won't commit additional crimes against me. He's learned his lesson. He's not going to steal from you again." "Aunt Patricia, how do you know he's learned his lesson?" "Because he's in jail. Because he's facing serious consequences. He was facing serious consequences a week ago when he was calling me asking for plea deals. That didn't stop him from trying to manipulate me into dropping charges." My father put his hand on my shoulder. "Vicky, what outcome are you hoping for here?" "I want my money back, and I want Michael to serve a sentence that reflects the seriousness of his crimes. And Amanda and the children will adjust to their new circumstances the same way any other family adjusts when a parent goes to prison for committing crimes." "Victoria," my mother said, "you're talking about your sister and your nieces and nephews like they're strangers. I'm talking about them like they're people who need to face the reality of their situation, instead of expecting me to fix problems that Michael created." As I walked to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this entire situation began. Complete clarity about my decisions and their consequences. 6 weeks from now, Michael would be sentenced for his crimes. Amanda and the children would begin learning to live without him, and I would either recover my stolen money through restitution or pursue civil remedies to reclaim it. The family pressure campaign had failed. The legal process was working appropriately, and I was finally free from the obligation to manage everyone else's emotions about consequences they hadn't created, but couldn't avoid. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my own life again. 3 weeks after the bail hearing, I received a call that I'd been both expecting and dreading. Amanda's voice was barely controlled when I answered my phone. "Vicky, we're losing the house. I'm sorry to hear that. Without Michael's income, I can't make the mortgage payments. The bank is starting foreclosure proceedings." "Amanda, that's a difficult situation, but it's not an unexpected one. You could help us." "How?" "You could loan us money to catch up on the mortgage payments, just until Michael gets out and finds work." The conversation felt like déjà vu, except this time Amanda was asking directly instead of having Michael steal indirectly. "Amanda, Michael is looking at several years in federal prison. Even with good behavior and a plea deal, he won't be available to help with mortgage payments for a long time. He might get probation. His lawyer says first-time offenders sometimes get probation instead of prison time." "Amanda, Michael pleaded guilty to multiple federal crimes involving nearly $50,000. The sentencing guidelines don't typically recommend probation for that level of theft, but it was family money. That has to count for something. Amanda, it wasn't family money. It was my money. And stealing from family members doesn't reduce the sentence, it often increases it because it violates trust relationships. Vicky, I'm going to be homeless with 4 children. Doesn't that matter to you? Of course it matters. But your housing situation is the result of Michael's choices, not mine. You could fix this situation. No, I could enable this situation. There's a difference. What's the difference? Fixing the situation would require Michael to face consequences for his crimes, and you to adjust to living within your actual means. Enabling the situation means I absorb the financial cost of Michael's crimes, while you avoid adjusting to reality. Vicky, I'm not asking you to absorb costs. I'm asking for a loan that will pay back. With what money? You just told me you can't afford your mortgage payments without Michael's income. When Michael gets out, he'll find work. Amanda, when Michael gets out of federal prison, he'll be a convicted felon. His employment options will be significantly limited. So you're just going to watch your nieces and nephews become homeless? I'm going to watch them adjust to a housing situation that their family can actually afford. They shouldn't have to suffer because their father made a mistake. Amanda, they're not suffering because Michael made a mistake. They're suffering because Michael committed crimes. And children often face consequences when their parents choose to become criminals. You're so cold about this. These are your family members. Amanda, these are family members who are facing the natural consequences of the choices that were made by the adult in their household. What about the choices you're making? I'm choosing to let the legal system handle criminal behavior appropriately instead of enabling it with financial rescues. Vicky, what if I could guarantee the loan repayment? What if I got a job and committed to paying you back monthly? What kind of job? I don't know yet. Something in retail or food service. Something that doesn't require special training. Amanda, how much do you think jobs in retail or food service pay? Enough to cover basic expenses. And enough to cover basic expenses plus mortgage payments plus loan repayment to me. She was quiet. Amanda, the math doesn't work. Even if you found full-time employment immediately, you wouldn't earn enough to maintain your current lifestyle and repay loans. So what do you suggest I do? I suggest you talk to a housing counselor about your options. You might be able to negotiate a short sale with the bank. You'll definitely need to find more affordable housing. You want me to give up our house. I want you to live within your means, instead of expecting other people to subsidize a lifestyle you can't afford. Vicky, this house has been our family home for 8 years. The children have never lived anywhere else. Amanda, millions of families lose their homes when a parent goes to prison. It's unfortunate, but it's a normal consequence of criminal behavior. Normal for other families, not for our family. What makes our family different? We're supposed to take care of each other. Amanda, when have you taken care of me? That's different. How is it different? You don't need taking care of. I needed not to have my life savings stolen. But that didn't stop Michael from stealing it. Vicky, you're being deliberately cruel. I'm being consistent with the principle that criminal behavior should have consequences, even when those consequences affect innocent children. Amanda, the children are experiencing consequences because their father chose to commit crimes, not because I chose to report those crimes. You chose to send their father to prison. No, Michael chose to commit crimes that carry prison sentences. I just declined to help him avoid those sentences. After Amanda hung up, I sat in my apartment thinking about the conversation. The desperation in her voice was real, and I did feel sorry for the children who were facing homelessness because of their father's crimes, but I also knew that loaning money to Amanda would accomplish nothing beyond postponing the inevitable adjustment to their new financial reality. Michael was going to prison, regardless of what I did. Amanda was going to need to find employment and affordable housing regardless of what I did. The only variable was whether I would financially subsidize their transition period or allow them to face it with the same resources available to every other family in similar circumstances. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Heard from Amanda about the house situation. Know this is difficult, but you're doing the right thing. Love you. It was the second message of unconditional support I'd received from him throughout this entire situation, and it meant everything to know that at least one family member understood the difference between helping and enabling. Tomorrow, I had a meeting with Ada Phillips to discuss my victim impact statement for Michael's sentencing hearing. It would be my opportunity to explain to the judge exactly how Michael's crimes had affected my life and my sense of security. After months of family pressure to minimize the impact of his crimes, it would be a relief to have a forum where the focus was on accountability rather than avoidance. The week before Michael's sentencing hearing brought an unexpected development. I received a certified letter from an attorney I didn't recognize, representing what the letterhead described as Thompson family interests. The letter was formal but desperate. Dear Miss Carter, we represent the Thompson family in matters related to the pending criminal case against Michael Thompson. Our clients wish to propose a comprehensive settlement agreement that would resolve all outstanding issues, while allowing Mr. Thompson to avoid incarceration and maintain his ability to support his family. The proposed settlement includes immediate payment of $25,000 in restitution, a structured payment plan for the remaining balance, and Mr. Thompson's agreement to community service in lieu of prison time. In exchange, our clients request that you support a sentencing recommendation of probation rather than incarceration. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to discuss the details of this proposal. I called Ada Phillips immediately. Miss Carter, I received a copy of that letter. I need to explain something about federal sentencing. Victims can provide input about their preferences, but judges make sentencing decisions based on federal guidelines, not on private agreements between defendants and victims. So even if I agreed to this settlement proposal, it wouldn't guarantee that Michael would avoid prison. Correct. Mr. Thompson pleaded guilty to serious federal crimes. The sentencing guidelines for those crimes include prison time. A judge might consider victim input, but they're not bound by victim preferences. What happens if I ignore the settlement proposal? Nothing. The criminal case proceeds according to the court's schedule, regardless of any private negotiations. And what happens if I engage with their proposal? That's your choice, but I'd advise you to be very careful about any agreements that suggest you can control criminal sentencing outcomes. I decided to call the Thompson family attorney directly. Mr. Wilson, this is Victoria Carter. I received your settlement proposal, and I have some questions. Miss Carter, thank you for calling. We're hoping to find a resolution that works for everyone involved. Mr. Wilson, your letter suggests that I can influence Mr. Thompson's criminal sentence. Is that accurate? Well, victim impact statements do carry weight with judges. If you were to express support for probation rather than incarceration. Mr. Wilson, are you suggesting that I should lie in my victim impact statement about the effects of Mr. Thompson's crimes? Not lie. Exactly. But perhaps emphasize your desire for restitution rather than punishment. Mr. Wilson, the effects of Mr. Thompson's crimes include financial loss, violation of trust, and months of stress while documenting his criminal behavior. Should I minimize those effects in my statement to the court? Miss Carter, we're hoping you might focus on the positive aspects of a resolution that allows Mr. Thompson to remain employed and support his family. What positive aspects? Well, if Mr. Thompson is in prison, he can't work to pay restitution. If he's on probation, he can work and make payments. Mr. Wilson, your client stole my money when he was employed. Why would continued employment guarantee restitution payments? Because probation would include requirements for regular payments. And if he violates probation by failing to make payments, then he would face additional consequences, such as prison time, potentially. So your proposal is that instead of going to prison now for the crimes he's already committed, Mr. Thompson should be given the opportunity to go to prison later, if he fails to make restitution payments? When you put it that way, it doesn't sound very appealing. Mr. Wilson, it doesn't sound appealing, because it isn't appealing. Your client committed serious federal crimes, and I'm not interested in helping him avoid appropriate consequences. Miss Carter, what about the children? They'll suffer if their father goes to prison. Mr. Wilson, the children are suffering because their father chose to become a criminal. That suffering won't be reduced by teaching them that criminal behavior can be negotiated away. So you're refusing to consider any settlement proposal. I'm refusing to misrepresent the impact of your client's crimes in order to help him avoid prison. Miss Carter, I have to ask, what outcome are you hoping for from the sentencing hearing? I'm hoping the judge will impose a sentence that reflects the seriousness of Mr. Thompson's crimes and serves as an appropriate deterrent to future criminal behavior. And if that sentence includes several years in federal prison, then Mr. Thompson will serve several years in federal prison. Miss Carter, you seem very certain that prison time is appropriate for first-time financial crimes within families. Mr. Wilson, I'm certain that federal crimes should carry federal consequences regardless of the relationships between perpetrators and victims. After I hung up, I spent the evening reviewing my victim impact statement. I'd written and rewritten it several times, trying to capture both the financial and emotional impact of Michael's crimes without sounding vindictive or punitive. The statement focused on 3 key points: the violation of trust that came with discovering family members had been spying on my financial accounts, the months of stress involved in documenting and reporting their criminal behavior, and the ongoing concern about financial security, given their continued belief that they were entitled to access my resources without permission. Tomorrow, I would read that statement to a federal judge who would decide how many years Michael Thompson would spend in prison for stealing my life savings. The family pressure campaign had failed. The legal manipulation had failed. Justice, it seemed, was finally working the way it was supposed to work. The federal courthouse was more crowded than I'd expected for Michael's sentencing hearing. In addition to my immediate family, I counted at least a dozen relatives and family friends who had come to support either Michael or me. The divide in loyalties was visible in the seating arrangement. Michael's supporters on one side, my supporters on the other. I arrived early and met with ADA Phillips to review the proceedings. Miss Carter, after Mr. Thompson's attorney presents mitigating factors, you'll have the opportunity to read your victim impact statement. Take your time, speak clearly, and focus on how the crimes affected you personally. Michael appeared in the same orange jumpsuit he'd worn for the bail hearing, but he looked thinner and more defeated than before. His attorney whispered urgently to him, as they reviewed what appeared to be a thick folder of documents. All rise. The Honorable Judge Martinez presiding. Judge Martinez took the bench and reviewed her paperwork before addressing the courtroom. This is the sentencing hearing for Michael Thompson, who has pleaded guilty to identity theft, unauthorized access to computer systems, and grand larceny in the first degree. Mr. Davidson, does your client wish to make a statement before sentencing? Michael's attorney stood. Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Thompson would like to address the court, and we have several character witnesses who would like to speak on his behalf. Proceed. Michael stood shakily and approached the podium. Your Honor, I want to start by saying that I take full responsibility for my actions. I know what I did was wrong, and I'm deeply sorry for the pain I've caused my family, especially my sister-in-law. He glanced toward me, then back at the judge. Your Honor, I was facing financial pressure that I didn't know how to handle. I made terrible decisions out of desperation, but that doesn't excuse what I did. I violated trust, I broke laws, and I hurt people I care about. Mr. Thompson, do you understand the seriousness of the crimes you committed? Yes, Your Honor. I understand that I stole money from my wife's sister, and that I used her personal information without permission. I understand that these are federal crimes with serious consequences. And what do you want the court to know about your situation? Your Honor, I want the court to know that I'm not a career criminal. I made a series of bad decisions during a crisis, but I'm committed to making things right. I want the opportunity to work and pay back every penny I stole. Mr. Thompson, how do you propose to pay restitution if you're sentenced to prison? Your Honor, I'm hoping the court might consider probation that would allow me to work and make monthly payments. Judge Martinez looked at him steadily. Mr. Thompson, you stole nearly $50,000 from a family member who trusted you. Why should the court believe that probation would be sufficient punishment for such serious crimes? Because, Your Honor, I understand now how much damage I've caused. I would never risk my family's future again by committing crimes. Mr. Davidson, do you have character witnesses? For the next hour, I listened to a parade of family members and friends testify about Michael's good character, his devotion to his children, and his history as a reliable friend and neighbor. Amanda spoke tearfully about the hardships his incarceration would create for their children. My mother spoke about the importance of family forgiveness and second chances. When the character witnesses finished, Judge Martinez looked at me. Miss Carter, you may now present your victim impact statement. I walked to the podium carrying the statement I'd revised so many times. The courtroom was completely silent as I arranged my papers and looked up at the judge. Your Honor, my name is Victoria Carter, and I'm the victim of Michael Thompson's crimes. 6 months ago, I discovered that my brother-in-law had been systematically spying on my personal financial information, accessing my bank accounts without authorization, and planning to steal my life savings. I paused and looked around the courtroom, making eye contact with several family members who had spent months trying to convince me to drop the charges. Your Honor, the financial impact of Mr. Thompson's crimes was devastating. He stole $47,850, which represented 3 years of careful saving and my entire emergency fund. That money was my financial security, my retirement planning, and my protection against unexpected crises. But the emotional impact was even more severe. Your Honor, I spent months discovering that family members I trusted were treating me like a target for financial exploitation. I learned that they viewed my financial responsibility as an entitlement they could access without my consent. Mr. Thompson has said that he was facing financial pressure and made bad decisions out of desperation. But, Your Honor, his crimes weren't impulsive decisions made during a crisis. They were carefully planned, methodically executed, and deliberately concealed. He spent months learning my banking patterns, gaining access to my personal information, and positioning himself to steal from me. When I discovered his crimes, he showed no remorse about the theft itself, only regret about being caught. I looked directly at Michael. Your Honor, even today, Mr. Thompson and his supporters have asked me to minimize the impact of his crimes to help him avoid prison. They continue to believe that family relationships should exempt him from facing consequences for criminal behavior. Your Honor, I'm not asking for vindictive punishment. I'm asking for justice. Mr. Thompson committed serious federal crimes that violated my trust, threatened my financial security, and forced me to spend months documenting criminal behavior by family members. Your Honor, Mr. Thompson chose to become a criminal. He chose to steal from someone who trusted him. He chose to plan and execute crimes that he knew would devastate my financial situation. I believe the court should impose a sentence that reflects the seriousness of his choices and sends a clear message that financial crimes carry serious consequences regardless of family relationships. When I finished and returned to my seat, Judge Martinez reviewed her notes for several minutes. The courtroom remained silent except for occasional sniffling from Amanda and her supporters. Mr. Thompson, please rise for sentencing. Michael stood with his attorney beside him. Mr. Thompson, you have pleaded guilty to serious federal crimes involving the theft of nearly $50,000 from a family member who trusted you. The crimes you committed required planning, deception, and a fundamental violation of trust. While I've heard testimony about your good character and the hardships your incarceration would create for your family, I must consider the seriousness of your crimes and the need for appropriate deterrence. Federal sentencing guidelines for these crimes recommend 18 to 24 months incarceration. Given your lack of criminal history and the testimony about your character, I'm sentencing you to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised probation. Amanda's gasp was audible throughout the courtroom. Additionally, you're ordered to pay full restitution of $47,850 to the victim, with payments to begin immediately upon your release from incarceration. Mr. Thompson, I want you to understand that financial crimes destroy trust and cause lasting harm to victims. The sentence I'm imposing reflects both the seriousness of your crimes and the hope that you'll use your time in prison to understand the full impact of your choices. As the hearing concluded, and Michael was led away in handcuffs, I felt something I hadn't expected, relief mixed with sadness. Justice had been served, but the cost to my family relationships had been significant. Several relatives approached me as I gathered my belongings. Some offered support, others expressed disappointment in the outcome, and a few made it clear that they blamed me for Michael's fate. But for the first time in 6 months, I felt like I could move forward with my life, knowing that criminal behavior had faced appropriate consequences, and that my financial security was protected by legal safeguards. The family pressure campaign was finally over, and the legal process had worked exactly as it should have worked. Michael Thompson was going to federal prison for stealing my life savings, and I was going home to rebuild my sense of security and trust. It wasn't the family relationship I would have chosen, but it was the justice I had earned through months of careful documentation and legal advocacy. Sometimes protecting yourself requires accepting that some relationships aren't worth preserving. 2 months after Michael's sentencing, I was working late at my office when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize with a federal area code. Miss Carter, this is Officer Patricia Reynolds with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I'm calling about inmate Michael Thompson. My heart stopped. Is everything all right? Mr. Thompson is fine, but I need to inform you of a development in his case. He's been working with our Financial Crimes Investigation Unit to provide information about other cases. What kind of information? Mr. Thompson has admitted to federal investigators that your case wasn't his first experience with identity theft and financial fraud. He's provided information about at least 6 other victims over the past 3 years. I sat down heavily. 6 other victims? Mr. Thompson appears to have been systematically targeting family members, friends, and acquaintances for financial fraud. Your case was unusual because you documented his crimes so thoroughly, but his pattern of behavior goes back several years. Who were the other victims? I can't provide specific names, but they include other family members, former employers, and people he met through social situations. Mr. Thompson used similar methods in each case, gaining access to personal information, learning financial patterns, and stealing amounts small enough to avoid immediate detection. How much money are we talking about? Based on his admissions, approximately $200,000 over 3 years. The number hit me like a physical blow. Michael hadn't been a desperate family member making a terrible mistake during a crisis. He'd been a career criminal who happened to be related to one of his victims. Officer Reynolds, why is he providing this information now? Federal inmates sometimes cooperate with investigations in hopes of reducing their sentences. Mr. Thompson claims he wants to make restitution to all his victims and take responsibility for his crimes. What does this mean for my case? It doesn't change your situation directly, but it does provide context for the crimes committed against you. It also means that Mr. Thompson's sentence might be modified based on his cooperation. Modified how? Potentially reduced if his information leads to additional prosecutions or recoveries for other victims. After Officer Reynolds hung up, I sat in my office trying to process what I'd just learned. Michael's theft of my money hadn't been an isolated incident, driven by financial desperation. It had been part of a multi-year criminal enterprise targeting people who trusted him. I thought about the months of family pressure to forgive him, to treat his crimes as a family misunderstanding, to help him avoid consequences, because he was a good man who made a mistake. My phone rang again. This time it was Detective Walsh. Miss Carter, I wanted to update you on some developments in the Thompson case. Have you spoken with the Federal Bureau of Prisons today? Yes, Officer Reynolds called me about Michael's cooperation with other investigations. Miss Carter, what I'm about to tell you might be difficult to hear, but I think you should know the full scope of what we've discovered. Go ahead. Mr. Thompson had been specifically targeting you for over 2 years before he actually stole your money. We found evidence that he'd been systematically gathering information about your financial situation, your employment situation, and your personal habits. What kind of evidence? Digital files on his personal computer containing photographs of your documents, notes about your financial patterns, and what appears to be a detailed plan for gaining access to your bank accounts. He was planning this for 2 years? At least 2 years. Miss Carter, this wasn't a desperate decision made during a family crisis. This was a carefully planned criminal enterprise with you as a specific target. Detective Walsh, did he target other family members? Yes. Your sister Amanda appears to have been both a victim and an unwitting accomplice. Mr. Thompson stole money from her personal accounts as well, but he convinced her that their financial problems were caused by external factors. Amanda was a victim too. Miss Carter, we found evidence that Mr. Thompson had been stealing from Amanda's accounts for over a year before he targeted yours. The mortgage problems and financial stress that he claimed justified stealing from you were actually caused by his theft from Amanda. So Amanda didn't know Michael was stealing from her. Based on our investigation, it appears that Amanda believed their financial problems were caused by job loss and unexpected expenses. She didn't realize that Michael was systematically stealing from her own accounts and then manipulating her into supporting his theft from yours. I ended the call and sat in my office thinking about this revelation. Amanda had been a victim of Michael's crimes, just like me. But she'd been manipulated into becoming an accomplice in his crimes against me. The family dynamics that had seemed so clear, Michael as the criminal, Amanda as the enabler, me as the victim, were actually much more complex. Amanda had been victimized by the same criminal, but in a different way. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Vicky, this is Amanda. I need to talk to you. I just learned some things about Michael that I didn't know before. Can we meet for coffee?" I stared at the message for several minutes before responding. "Yes. Tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. Java Central downtown." It was time to have a conversation that I'd thought was finished months ago. But apparently, the story of Michael's crimes was more complicated than any of us had realized. Amanda looked older when she walked into Java Central the next afternoon. The stress of the past few months showed in her face. But there was something else there too, a clarity I hadn't seen before. She ordered coffee and sat across from me at a corner table, setting down a manila folder that looked remarkably similar to the ones I'd used to document Michael's crimes. "Vicky, I owe you an apology. A real one." "For what specifically?" "For not believing you when you said Michael was a criminal. For pressuring you to drop charges. For acting like his crimes were your responsibility to fix." I waited for her to continue. "I got a call from Detective Walsh yesterday. She explained that Michael had been stealing from me too, for over a year before he stole from you." "How much?" "About $30,000. Money I thought I'd spent on household expenses and children's activities. Money that I thought we'd lost to job changes and unexpected bills." Amanda opened her folder and pulled out bank statements and financial documents. "Vicky, I've been going through our financial records with a forensic accountant. Michael wasn't behind on mortgage payments because he lost his job. He was behind on mortgage payments because he'd been stealing our mortgage money to fund other activities." "What other activities?" "Gambling. Online poker specifically. He'd been stealing money from my accounts, your accounts, and apparently several other people to finance gambling losses." I looked at the documents she'd spread across the table. "Amanda, how long had this been going on?" "At least 3 years, maybe longer. The accountant found patterns going back to before his supposed job loss. So when he told the family that he was unemployed, he was actually employed, but spending his income gambling and stealing money from other sources to cover household expenses." "Amanda, why didn't you notice money disappearing from your accounts?" "Because he was managing all our finances. He told me I was bad with money and that he needed to handle everything to keep us organized." She laughed bitterly. "He was stealing from me and convincing me that I was the problem." "When did you start to suspect something?" "When Detective Walsh showed me the evidence they found on Michael's computer. Detailed records of money he'd taken from my accounts, your accounts, and other people. Plans for taking more money. Notes about which family members had savings he could access. He was targeting other family members too. Your cousin Sarah, my Aunt Helen, even his own mother. Michael had detailed profiles of everyone in both families, including information about their financial situations and their trust levels." I studied Amanda's face as she explained what she'd discovered. The anger and betrayal she was experiencing looked familiar. It was the same thing I'd felt months earlier when I'd first realized the scope of Michael's crimes. "Amanda, how do you feel about the fact that I pressed charges and he went to prison?" "Relieved. Angry that it took so long. Grateful that you were smart enough to document everything and strong enough to see it through. You're not angry that I didn't try to handle it as a family matter." "Vicky, there was no family matter to handle. Michael was a criminal who happened to be related to his victims. Criminal behavior requires legal consequences. That's a different perspective than you had 6 months ago. 6 months ago, I was being manipulated by the same criminal who was manipulating the legal system, the financial system, and everyone in our family. What changed your mind?" "Learning that I was a victim too. Learning that the financial stress that Michael claimed justified stealing from you was actually created by his theft from me." Amanda pulled out another document. "Vicky, I want to show you something. It was a handwritten note in Michael's handwriting, dated 2 years ago. V. Carter savings target. $40.50K estimated. Access via family events. Purse surveillance. Bank info obtained Christmas 2021. Plan execution when mortgage crisis reaches peak stress levels for maximum family sympathy. I read the note twice, feeling sick. He was planning this for 2 years, at least. And Vicky, there are similar notes for every family member who had savings or good credit. Michael wasn't a desperate family member making a mistake. He was a career criminal. Amanda, I'm sorry you had to discover this. I'm sorry I put you through months of pressure to protect someone who was victimizing both of us. We sat in silence for several minutes, processing the implications of what Amanda had discovered. Amanda, what happens now? Now I cooperate with the federal investigation into Michael's other crimes. I provide whatever information I can to help other victims recover their money. And I figure out how to rebuild my life as a single mother. How are the children handling everything? Better than I expected. It's been hard explaining that their father is in prison, but it's been easier since I can tell them honestly that he made choices that hurt people, and he's facing consequences for those choices. No more protecting them from the reality of the situation. No more protecting any of us from reality. Michael is a criminal who victimized his own family. We're better off without him, and the children are better off understanding that actions have consequences. Amanda, what do you need from me going forward? Nothing. I mean, I'd like to rebuild our relationship if you're willing, but I don't need you to fix my problems or help me manage the consequences of Michael's crimes. I'd like to rebuild our relationship too. Good. Because I've learned something important over the past few months. What's that? The difference between family loyalty and enabling criminal behavior. What you did, reporting Michael's crimes, and seeing them through the legal system, that was actually family loyalty. You were protecting our family from a criminal who happened to be related to us. As we prepared to leave the coffee shop, Amanda handed me one final document. What's this? A restitution agreement. Michael's attorney contacted me about setting up a payment plan for the money he stole from you. Apparently, his cooperation with federal investigators might result in some financial recoveries that could be used for victim restitution. How much money? Maybe 60% of what he stole from everyone. It's not complete restitution, but it's more than anyone expected to recover. I looked at the document, which outlined a plan for monthly payments beginning immediately upon Michael's release from prison. Amanda, do you think he'll actually follow through with restitution payments? I think he'll do whatever the federal probation system requires him to do, and if he doesn't, he'll go back to prison. And you're comfortable with that arrangement? Vicky, I'm comfortable with the fact that Michael is finally facing appropriate consequences for his criminal behavior. Whether or not he learns from those consequences is his choice. As I drove home from coffee with Amanda, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this entire situation began. Closure. Michael was in prison for his crimes. Amanda understood that she'd been a victim, rather than an accomplice. The family pressure to enable criminal behavior had ended. And, most importantly, I'd learned that protecting yourself from criminal behavior, even criminal behavior by family members, wasn't cruel or vindictive. It was necessary, appropriate, and ultimately beneficial for everyone involved. 6 months later, I received a letter that brought the final chapter of Michael's story full circle. The return address showed the federal correctional institution where he was serving his sentence. Dear Victoria, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to write to you before I'm transferred to a minimum security facility for the final 6 months of my sentence. I've been working with prison counselors and federal investigators for months now, trying to understand how I became someone who could steal from family members and justify it as reasonable behavior. What I've learned is that I spent years convincing myself that other people's financial resources were available for my use when I needed them. I told myself that family members should help each other, that my gambling wasn't really gambling because I was going to win everything back, and that taking money without asking was just accessing resources that should have been shared anyway. I know now that all of those justifications were lies. I told myself to avoid facing the fact that I was choosing to steal from people who trusted me. Victoria, I want you to know that I understand why you pressed charges and followed through with the legal process. For months, I was angry at you for destroying our family by involving law enforcement. But I've learned that I destroyed our family when I decided to become a criminal. You didn't send me to prison. I sent myself to prison when I chose to steal your money. I also want you to know that I've been working with investigators to identify all the people I stole from over the years. The list is longer than I want to admit, and the amount of money is much larger than anyone in our family knew. I've provided information that has helped federal investigators recover about $120,000 from hidden accounts and assets I accumulated through criminal activity. That money is being distributed to victims as restitution. Victoria, you should receive a restitution check within the next few weeks for approximately $31,000. It's not the full amount I stole from you, but it's a significant portion of your money being returned. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect to have a relationship with you when I'm released. I just wanted you to know that I understand now that you were protecting yourself and our family from a criminal who happened to be related to you. You were right to document my crimes. You were right to report them to authorities. You were right to follow through with prosecution, even when family members pressured you to drop charges. I was wrong about everything. I hope you're able to rebuild your sense of financial security and trust. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand the damage I caused and the courage it took for you to stand up to me and to family pressure. Sincerely, Michael Thompson. I read the letter twice, then set it aside, and opened my laptop to check my bank account. Sure enough, there was a deposit for $31,200 from Federal Restitution Services dated 2 days earlier. The money felt surreal. For months, I'd assumed that Michael's theft would be a permanent financial loss that I'd have to absorb and move past. Recovering more than half of my stolen savings felt like an unexpected gift. My phone rang. Amanda's number. Vicky, did you get a letter from Michael? Yes, and a restitution payment. Did you? Both. He apologized for stealing from me too, and explained how he'd been manipulating me to enable his crimes against other people. How do you feel about his apology? Relieved that he finally understands what he did, but not interested in rebuilding a relationship with him. Are you planning to respond to his letter? No, I'm planning to focus on my own life and my children's lives going forward. Michael can handle his own rehabilitation. That sounds healthy. Vicky, I wanted to call you because I have some news. I'm getting married next month. Congratulations. Tell me about him. His name is Paul. He's a teacher, and he has 2 children from his previous marriage. We've been dating for 4 months, and he's nothing like Michael. How so? He's honest about money, responsible with finances, and he treats me like a partner rather than someone he needs to manage and control. How are your children adjusting to him? They love him. He treats them with respect and includes them in decisions about family activities. It's the first time they've seen what healthy adult relationships actually look like. I'm happy for you, Amanda. Vicky, I want to ask you something, but I need you to be honest in your answer. What? Are you comfortable with me remarrying so soon after Michael went to prison? Amanda, You were essentially a single parent for years while Michael was stealing from your family and lying about his employment. You deserve to build a healthy relationship with someone who treats you well. Some people in the family think I should wait until Michael's sentence is completed before moving on. What do you think? I think Michael forfeited his right to have input on my life choices when he chose to become a criminal. I agree completely. Vicky, will you come to the wedding? It's going to be small, just immediate family and close friends. I'd be honored to come. After we hung up, I thought about Amanda's journey over the past year. She'd gone from enabling Michael's criminal behavior to becoming a victim advocate who helped other families recognize financial abuse patterns. She'd found employment as a case manager for a non-profit organization that helped families affected by white-collar crime. Her work involved helping victims navigate the legal system and connect with resources for financial recovery. It was remarkable how someone who'd started this story as an enabler had become someone who helped other people avoid the mistakes she'd made. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Heard about Amanda's engagement. Also heard you recovered most of your stolen money. Proud of how you handled this entire situation. Love you. I typed back. Thank you for supporting me throughout this process. It meant everything to know that someone understood the difference between justice and vindictiveness. You taught the whole family an important lesson about accountability, even when it's difficult. As I prepared for bed that night, I thought about the letter from Michael and the restitution payment and Amanda's wedding invitation. The story that had begun with a devastating betrayal at a family reunion had ended with justice, accountability, and the beginnings of healthier relationships. Michael was still in prison, but he was finally taking responsibility for his crimes. Amanda had escaped an abusive marriage and found someone who treated her with respect. I had recovered most of my stolen money and rebuilt my sense of security. The family members who had pressured me to enable criminal behavior had learned that protecting criminals doesn't protect families. The family members who had supported my decision to seek justice had been validated in their understanding that accountability strengthens relationships rather than destroying them. It wasn't the ending I would have chosen when this story began, but it was an ending that felt just, appropriate, and hopeful. Sometimes the best revenge against people who betray your trust is simply refusing to enable their continued betrayal of others. And sometimes the best outcome of a family crisis is discovering that you're capable of protecting yourself and others from behavior that should never be protected in the name of family loyalty. Michael had wanted my money, and he'd taken it through criminal behavior. Instead, he'd accidentally taught me the difference between love and enabling, between family loyalty and criminal protection, and between temporary financial loss and permanent moral compromise. In the end, I'd kept my integrity, recovered my money, and gained a deeper understanding of what healthy relationships actually require. It was a much better outcome than Michael had planned for, but exactly the outcome his crimes had made inevitable. Justice, it turned out, was more satisfying than revenge could ever have been.